This is Home for Ambition, a weekly live show. I'm John Colliker, CEO and co-founder of Leland. We have Mike Mella and Jake Lingwall here, and this is episode 6. Right? We are hot, not quitting yet, still going. Still have some people that tune in, so thanks for being here. And for those of you that listen on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever, we appreciate you being a part of it. So yeah, we got a packed agenda. I wanna jump into these topics quickly. But Mike, Jake, how are you doing? Any big news you have to share for us before we get started?
Big news, trying to live stream this to LinkedIn as well right now, which is kind of fun. So if anyone's watching this on LinkedIn, hello, welcome to Home for Ambition. Go find us on your podcast system of choice, or preferably on Leland. But welcome to the party, and I don't know, excited to see what happens.
Love it.
Yeah, doing great. Excited to chat. We've got good topics this week. I think it will be fun.
Awesome. Who's going to kick us off?
I'll talk about something. This week was a really kind of interesting news week around what was happening in the AI world. And the one is an engineer that caught my eye is Vercel. Are you guys familiar with Vercel?
Of course.
Yeah, they got hacked this week.
They did. So my question was, hey, do you have any projects running on Vercel? Or if you've done it, really great platform. A lot of people, I think they own Next.js, which is like one of the default tools that AI will use to build a single page app for you. So I don't know if any stuff you guys have built is in Next.js or not, but if it is, you probably have hosted something on Vercel, which is exciting, except for when it gets hacked. So did you read any of the details around what happened?
No, I don't know what happened other than I got an email saying my projects were not impacted.
I saw that there was like the CEO tweeted something, and then people were like, that was too cryptic. You need to be more specific. Do I need to take down my Vercel projects? So I didn't, but I don't know the details of it. And it just seems like security is just a giant nightmare across the board. I feel like I'm like numb to security breaches at this point because they happen so often.
That's true, actually. I would never follow any of my financial advice, but I did have an investment thesis for a few years that I would just always buy stock after there was like a privacy or hacking scandal, because I figured most people wouldn't care in a couple of weeks. It turns out that was a good investment strategy. Vercel's not public, but yeah, so they got hacked, which is just kind of interesting. They're like this home for like a lot of vibe coded projects and stuff. The use of AI and AI as a culprit was really interesting. So I just wanted to check it. And so my understanding of what happened is that the root cause of the hack came from a Vercel employee who was playing Roblox. And he was looking for a hack or a cheat to help with Roblox, and he downloaded something. But he had signed into Roblox with like his Google account or something, and he had given them full access to his Google account.
That's real? That's the real reason?
Yeah. I believe this is the story. I could be wrong. When someone check in the audience, check me on that.
Right. So let's go with that.
And so then they obviously they got access to his whole account, and then they were able to go and get access to secret systems, or not secret systems, but secure confidential systems, to which they discovered that the Vercel was storing environment variables in plain text. Which
explain that for the non-engineers, not for me, but the non-engineers that.
Yeah. I was waiting for the gasps in the room. So basically, environment variables are usually like fine. They're like things that your code needs to understand how to like run, which systems to connect to, API keys, stuff like that. Except they're usually secrets, which are very secure. They're like, these are the expensive ones. If these leak, we're in a lot of trouble. And then there's just like general environment variables that are like, this is our base URL. Like, we just need this as a variable. So Vercel was making it very hard for the average person to distinguish between what's an environment variable and what's a secret. And it turns out, because a lot of their stuff was from people that are just vibe coding, that no one knows the difference. And so everyone was putting like secrets into just environment variables. And so they were just storing those secrets in plain text, which is troubling.
Yeah, I guess
So,
I don't like, I'm more concerned that I have no idea what you just said. And everyone that is vibe coding is in the same boat as me. And so we're just in the beginning of the end when it comes to security. And then you read about Mythos and you're like, all right, it's over. Like, is it just, are we just living in a world where like security is just broken always? Or do these, I guess, the other answer would be you need to play offense at the same time as other people playing, or you need to play defense at the same time other people are playing offense. And Claude Code just needs to get a lot better with security, because like the average person doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, it feels like there's these conflicting narratives where on one side, security companies' stock is like tanking. like Claude releases Mythos and a lot of these companies' stock went down like 10, 20% overnight. The narrative being AI is going to get so good at security, you don't need to rely on these vendors to provide it for you. And then the other side is you just enabled a massive amount of people to start having much more control of building technical things through vibe coding, and they're doing dumb stuff that's like going to create issues. You also have this reality of human stupidity hasn't gone away either. Like people still play Roblox and give access to everything, or like they fall for phishing scams, and doesn't matter how good Mythos or these LLMs are, that doesn't mean that like a dumb person isn't going to do dumb things.
I think this is a dumb person thing. Like this isn't, I mean, like, sure, maybe this engineer shouldn't have done that, but like, to me, the bottom line is not that it's a dumb person doing dumb things. It's like an ignorant person doing dumb things, which we've just given a generation of ignorant people.
That's exactly why I wanted to bring it up, and not that this show is like for educating the masses on stuff, but hey, if you've got very secret level things, you should probably be aware of, if you're going to go ship something to production, that you need to treat that with a certain level of care. And in this case,
what does that mean? Like what? Yeah.
Like your API key, right? If you share your API key and someone can get it, they can just go use it. And that's going to cost you money. So in this case, if Leland, where I work, we were using Vercel, which we don't, and we put an environment variable of like our Anthropic API key, and we didn't set it as a secret, and it's just there in plain text. This person who got access to the database can now just copy and paste your API key and go use it, because it wasn't encrypted at rest. And so if you do it the right way, if they get access to the database, they don't get the actual API key. It's like encrypted, it's stored, like you can't actually use it. There's like a conversion step that they still have to get access to. So the fact that like these sensitive pieces of information that like can go and cost you a bunch of money, they can just copy and paste it. If Vercel had secured it better, even if they got access, it wouldn't be so immediately accessible for them. But in this case, people are pasting in these tokens with like unlimited spend budget into these vibe coded web apps. Someone downloads a cheat for Roblox, and now everyone has your API key, and they could be going like just cranking through they could be tokenmaxxing right now on your API credentials.
Yeah.
To me, though, it's like that. It's super interesting to understand like the specifics of this specific breach. But to me, it just speaks to like, if it's not this one, it's something else. And if it's not that one, it's one more. And like it almost just feels like every company that gets of a certain scale is going to be a target for this. And unless you have like really strong defensive measures at play, these open source models, like, I'm sure if you pointed Claude at a website, it'd probably say, oh, that's against our terms of service to try to hack someone. But all these open source models don't have that. And so then you just end up in this world where like people are constantly playing catch up. And if you're a target, if you have a target on your back because you're a big company, like, are you just hosed? And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean when security is just like constantly, we're just constantly getting these emails like, oh, you might have been compromised. Okay, great. Add that to the list of websites that I have to go figure out if I've been compromised.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to figure out. So one narrative is this is like the early days of the internet where people would be coding in assembly or like these really low level languages, and you can make massive mistakes and have huge memory ramifications because of those mistakes. And like we actually kind of solved that. Like compilers got good, languages got good, and it's unlikely you're going to make a mistake that just destroys your memory. Or the other narrative is you get an arms race where as models get better at hacking and then like other models get better at security, like you're constantly getting like security is kind of a never solved problem.
Yeah, I think that's the arms race theory is one I like, and these things go back and forth. Yeah, so obviously Anthropic marketing a lot about how Mythos is too dangerous to release, which is really great marketing. It makes everyone wants to get it. And maybe it is true that it could hack you, but this is why it's like, well, then you also need to just continue to invest in tools that are secure by default and have an awareness. And we had a great question in the chat that's like, well, how can the average Joe or Susan ensure their API is encrypted or developed as a secret when I vibe code? Well, you should probably be aware of what those terms are. And the great thing when you're using AI is like you can ask Claude, it's like, hey, you want this needs my API key. How can I make sure that this is kept secure? Or even more importantly, from like a liability perspective, like ensuring people's information is kept safe. That's a huge problem for businesses. And so if you're vibe coding an app and you want to store people's social security numbers, you should probably spend some good time talking with AI or find some people that can advise you on how to handle these things, because they are just dangerous pieces of information to want to own. And without giving too big of broad advice or training or classes on it, AI has a good sense for this. Talk to them about what's sensitive as you're vibe coding. Generally try to follow their advice. And then most vendors at a certain scale are going to do this correctly, which is a bit shocking about Vercel having this unintuitive security gap here. But use good vendors, talk to AI, and then just always have this like security in the back of your mind as you're building. And vibe coding is the funnest thing ever, but it's dangerous. And so this is just a great reminder to be thoughtful.
You missed the most important part of the comment, which was that I love John K's questions as he is average like most of us. LOL, which I am proud to represent. The average vibe coder, the average ignorant vibe coder is me. And I do think like just asking Claude, like even if I don't know what to ask it, saying what should I be doing to make this more secure? Where are the vulnerabilities? I think that can be a huge like starting point. And then you'll continue to learn more as you go. Mike, anything else on this topic, or should we go to our next one?
No, I mean, +1 to, I'm going to get just ask Claude tattooed on my forearm, because that's the answer to everything.
Why not on your face?
Yeah, put it on my forehead. John, you had a really interesting post this week I'd love to chat about of kind of the 1% employee. Would love to hear your take on that.
Yes. All right. I am now developing theories. Apparently, I'm going to pitch you this theory, and I've actually talked to a few people about it that have disputed it. So I'll tell you some of the counters to it as well. So this is called the last 1% theory, which is, in my opinion, the reason why companies might actually hire more people in a world of AI. So
I mean, this is quite the theory, up there with the Big Bang Theory here.
It's a really important theory. So I guess if anyone that's using AI in depth feels that AI is doing part of their job, right? It's making them somewhat more productive. They're obviously spending more time on doing other things, but it's not doing the 100% of your job yet. So if it's doing 20% of your job, that's great, right? Or let's say it's doing 80% of your job, so you still have that last 20%. That means you're 5 times more productive, assuming you can then take that 20% and apply it to other things, and then it continues to do, the 5x or the 4x of what you were doing before. If it's doing 90% of your job, that value continues to increase. If it's doing 95, 99%, with every percentage increase that it does more of your job and allows you to continue to do additional things, it makes you more productive, which means the opportunity cost of not hiring you or of letting you go or an employee go just grows, right? So right now, if we have engineers on our team that are shipping code at a rate that they've never been able to ship before, and that code doesn't happen unless they're there, right? And so they are now like infinitely more valuable, then I need to hire more of them, right? At least in the short term. Now, the ironic part is maybe what happens when that turns into 100% of your job. And then maybe the whole theory breaks down. But I guess assuming that there's always one last percent, which I think a core part of the theory would be there's usually more to be done. So even if it does 100% of your current job, you can invent kind of the next wave, then it makes you more valuable. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, it feels like it's missing. The assumption that makes it work is that there's an infinite amount of work to be done. And I think there are roles where that's not true. Support would be an example. So let's say in a pre-AI world, I'm getting 1,000 support requests a day. So I need 5 reps to answer all of them. Let's say AI can now answer 50% of them. So do I only need 2 reps to answer the ones that it can't? And then if it gets to a world where AI is doing 99%, do I just need 1 rep? Or even, I don't even need a rep. Someone else can just take the few issues that get escalated so high that AI can't do it. I think it's maybe more true of engineering, where you could say there's infinite product to be built. And so if engineers become 100 times more productive, I'm just going to build 100 times more product. I don't think it's ubiquitous across all roles.
I think that's fair. I think that's also true maybe at the market level too, like as a company. where you sort of have to, we actually had someone commented on my LinkedIn post, one of our coaches on Leland, which is great. It is also why I love having smart people on our platform. But he made that a similar point, which was like, there's a supply and demand here where even if we produce, let's call it unlimited food, at some point people aren't hungry anymore. There's no more food. There's no more demand to eat more food. And so maybe in a software context, like you said, software engineering, that would mean we have just insatiable demand. Now, if you're producing that much more software and the business is actually growing, you might argue that they're going to see more need on the support side. So maybe, it's sort of like each one might grow and affect the other one. So it's a little bit, but there's got to be some form of equilibrium. And I think that's a fair kind of critique of the theory.
I do think there's something to the idea of like, if AI is leverage, right? And the bigger the lever, the more valuable you are because you can just move more stuff. I think that theory is pretty sound, right? I think the core of it is true. The bigger the lever, the more the leverage, to get to the point of like what happens when the lever's so big, you just start adding more levers, like one person is over everything or something, is interesting. But I think that the general premise of it, I agreed with. And then the only counterpoint that like, I think is interesting. And I don't know even how to verbalize this. I haven't tried before, but it was like, oh, all these jobs with super high leverage and stuff. And then when COVID happened, there was like essential workers and non-essential workers. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think either of you were essential at the time. Were you?
No,
it was not essential.
Yeah, like there's something about that like comes back to like in this world of like giant leverage for every person. Like, does the essential worker still shows up in surprising ways?
Can I give you a different framing for essential? Like the premise of non-essential and essential was needs to have a physical interactive layer, right? Like needs to touch the world in a physical way. And everyone that was like, digital worker was like, all right, you're gonna be fine. And I guess there was like a need, nurses or whatever. I guess if you were maybe touching the physical world, but not necessary, you could also be cut out from being essential. But in a world where AI is both the leverage and perhaps even creating some of the additional levers, right? For example, we're actually going to start building our first AI employees end to end, which is sort of like a series of tasks with a judgment layer on top. And we'll share more about that in coming weeks as we make progress. One of the things that we started to think about is who becomes valuable in a world where you have all of these AI employees. And essentially it came down to two jobs, which were, and we've talked about this in the past, the engineers versus hot people type thing. But we articulated it as builders versus fills being the physical interactive layers. So you have builders that are sort of creating all of the back-end engines, operations, whatever it is, systems to drive demand. But then the fills, which just feels like such a terrible, I don't know. I know a couple nice fills, but for some reason it just sounds weird. But the fills are the salespeople. They are maybe the customer support reps that need to get on the phone with you because you're so mad that you want to just talk to someone, not an AI. They are someone that needs to show up and go to a conference, right? And I do think that those folks are like, someone's got to show. We have some team members in Amsterdam this week, and they showed up to a conference. And like, turns out I can't send my AI agent to a conference in Amsterdam just yet. And I think that's always going to matter to a certain extent. And I think the builders are also going to need to enable them. So
we have a company value here, which I love and respect. And we've been sharing a lot, even on some of the AI builder programs we've been doing. Some of your opening statements have been emphasizing the fact that everyone a builder. Do we need to add an asterisk to it? Everyone a builder except Phil?
It's a good point. I mean, it's a good question. I think Phil's would benefit from understanding the systems that are enabling them. But I do think that we will see somewhat of a bifurcation where it's like our head of people vibe coded a careers website, which is awesome. And like, he would tell you he's a Phil and he's supposed to be interacting with the candidates we're recruiting. I think that's like probably the best use of his time. But it was valuable for him to learn how to vibe code and deploy something. And I think that it was nice for him to own that. Now, probably in the future, would it be better for him to just interact with a system that does it entirely for him and he doesn't have to deal with it? Yes. I mean, that was sort of what Claude Code ended up giving him. It wasn't that hard. But I would imagine that all the operations that support him, like how he does candidate outreach or coordination, like that should all be done through systems that take up very little of his time so he can spend time on the things that matter most.
So to the average person, should I be harnessing my inner Phil or my inner builder? Which skill set should I be doubling?
Well, ironically, I think the most enduring job here. So it sounds like the harder job is the builder. And historically, engineers have been paid more and have sort of been like this gate-kept job.
It's important we don't change that status quo, John.
But it's really hard to know like what happens when, as you said, like more and more code is being written by AI employees or whatever. Now, I think I would still take the side of the bet that I shared in the beginning, which was I think there's so much code to write that I would rather continue to have a bigger, like, I don't think we're even close to the equilibrium, but I think that you're going to need people touching the physical world, and that's going to be pretty enduring. So I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a strong opinion on which is better. I would imagine builders get paid more in the short term. That is for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
There was a call from the audience to make a poll over something. So I threw up a harder job, fills or builders. If the audience wants to vote, we'll come back to the recap at the end.
Okay, next question for you guys. On this note of everyone a builder, enabling people to automate their jobs, I saw an article recently that Meta supposedly spent like $200 million on tokens last quarter. And then I've had a couple friends reach out asking us on how are we thinking about AI spend, enabling people to build with AI, automate for themselves. I'm curious your guys' thoughts. As an individual, how much should I be investing in AI? And then as companies, how should people be thinking about this?
I think the interesting thing that I'll just share to start, and then I'd love your thoughts, Jake, is that it's absolutely clear that companies are thinking about this cost as a labor budget item. And that is why spend is essentially off the charts, right? Like when I look at our Anthropic bill and I compare it to a fully burdened employee, I'm like, jack that thing up. It is just so much better to ramp your existing people than to have to go hire someone that has sick days and all these, all the things that go into it. So I think that's the reality that I'm seeing. Jake, would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think token spend is in many ways a vanity metric, right? And it's easy to like laugh about on the engineering side, the leaderboard supposedly that like Facebook has. It's like if you want to be respected, you got to be spending the most tokens. And there was some good on X, some videos going around this week of like people laughing at basically someone being put on a tip plan, a token. Basically, you weren't spending enough tokens, so you're not on a PIP. You're on a like token spend plan. We're gonna have to let you go if you don't spend more tokens. But I think there is obviously something to your point on, and I actually control most of the token budget and spend and monitor it here and set the limits and respond to people's needs. And very rarely am I ever like, oh, this person needs more tokens, we shouldn't give it to them. It still feels like, at least right now, there's more leverage in token. And my default mode is to assume that this is going to be money well spent. And maybe that'll be a short-term phase and we all get to a reckoning someday. But I mean, I didn't reject Mike's last request for an increase.
I mean,
Give me another hit.
There's just no way that well, there is needless spend in token usage right now for sure. Like there's a lot of experimental stuff happening, and you got to monitor that. You can't just spend just to spend. But I think when you start to do the math on like, oh, I can make an engineer, I can create all this leverage with one person, and I don't have the coordination costs and all these things. It's like there's just no way that is not the right move. And I think the only way you justify it is treating it as labor budget.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation on this.
Counter argument though. So there is a lot that has been said around tokens being heavily subsidized right now in order to capture more market demand. And it's hard to believe that in the future tokens won't become more expensive than they are now, because like VC money can't forever subsidize our token consumption. So that's like point one of if we all get hooked on tokens and then the cost of tokens X, are we screwed? And then two, I was listening to this interview from Dario, CEO of Anthropic, and he was talking about how hard it is for them to predict compute. And what he was explaining is data centers are like 2 to 5 years out from now. And so he basically needs to predict how much demand is there going to be for tokens in 2028. Now you could say, well, last year it 10x'd. So it went from 100 million to a billion. So this would say, let's go from or no, from a billion to 10 billion. So it's like, it's going to go to 100 billion, then a trillion. So do I need to go buy $1 trillion of compute for 2028? And even if I'm off by 20%, and we're doing 800 billion in revenue, we're bankrupt as a company because I like miscalculated the amount of compute we need. And so I don't know, like it's a really hard problem to solve. Is it a bad idea?
I mean, yeah, I don't, it is, you're right. It is a hard problem to solve, but I have no doubt that they will underestimate it. Like there's just no, I think their only chance here is that they build every ounce of compute possible and they're still under. Like the demand for intelligence is through the roof. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. And because it is tapping into output of what used to need to be humans. Then you can think about all the connection to the physical world and robots and everything and all the compute they're going to need. It just seems it seems like the question is actually just how do I get as much money as possible to go build out as many data centers as possible because I know I will consume it.
So got a comment actually from Pat Cox, who is a former, his LinkedIn shows him as a technical program manager, data and AI infrastructure was his last role, data infra for AI at Meta. And he said, it's definitely interesting to think this is a labor cost versus an IT cost. The AI tools at a company like Meta are generally an IT cost, like any SaaS subscription. The world is ripe for optimization as well. I realized when reading that, it's like, oh, we were just saying that I was approving token spend and I don't approve, that is an IT cost. And so
True.
I'm still approving it as an IT cost and we haven't actually treated it directly as a human. So maybe as we're doing our build our employee, maybe we'll have to carve out a way to measure that spend on a more of a budget rather than treating it like an IT enablement cost like so far we've done here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That like even though that might be how companies are thinking about it, it's not how it's like functionally working. It's like that's why the CTO of Uber said, I've already used all my credits for the year. It's like, okay, well that's not the CEO of Uber saying we've already hired everyone we want to hire. It's like, it's still largely rolling up under IT. It's a good point.
I did want to share one last anecdote here. I don't want to go too far back where it was, but I was interesting conversation I was having with one of our killer employees today. And I remarked that I noticed that she was our top spender in AI tokens again. And her default reaction was to start like, oh, I can look at it. I can cut it down. And I was like, no, that's not my reaction. I'm just really interested in like learning like where the value is we're getting from this. And like, I wanted to encourage it. And so it's this interesting, like from a manager perspective, like having awareness and insight into spend, but also wanting to like verify the ROI. And then also having this conversation where it's like, yeah, you're doing an incredible job. And it looks like, your output is directly correlated to how many tokens you're spending. And so the question is like, should you be spending more versus should you be spending less? And I think that's a really interesting question to ask because there's no clear answer to it. And I think if you happen to be a manager of people spending money, it's like, think about what you're going to say in that moment, what you want to encourage, and make sure you've got the right budget alignment to support it, because you can say something and it's heard very differently.
Okay, well, I want to move on. So we talked about the AI employee and what it takes to build a great AI employee. So part of that is enabling AI consumption or buying more tokens and the budget there. The other part is how do you create the context needed for the employee to do its job well? Like what does it get access to? So there was another controversial Meta article that came out that I'm very excited to get your guys' thoughts on, where Meta announced that it is going to start recording everything that people do on their computers. So screen time, keyboard interactions, moving their mouse, whatever, so that they can get enough context on what employees are doing to automate them away. And I guess question number one is this smart or is this dystopian? And then number two is, if it is smart, should everyone be doing this?
I think we should go a step further and we should just live stream our work here. Home for Ambition just a 24-hour show where every discussion we have is live. I think that's pretty dystopian. I think it's the idea of always being watched doesn't make me feel like a trusted and empowered individual. And to me, it would be just super demotivating to feel like I was being treated that way. And I'm a prideful person, I suppose. And I don't think I don't think I could work in that environment. You'd have to lie to me and tell me it wasn't the case, or I would probably have to leave. So I'm pretty heavy on the dystopian side of that.
Would you do it to yourself though, if you were trying to be a more productive employee?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think I would, like, if it was me doing it and it was like my data set, to me, that's interesting, and especially if it's self-driven.
What if the
Probably not.
Jake's agent suddenly is like going on Twitter 4 times a day, and it's like, what are you doing?
There's certainly working at a startup, right? If you work at a 4-person company and they're monitoring you 24 hours a day, that's tough.
So
I guess
if you were a Meta
large
employee,
corporate,
would you be quitting your job right now? Because you're saying you wouldn't want to work in that.
I'm not sure I would have lasted at Meta if I was an employee. It probably would have pushed me out a while ago, to be fair. If for example, Leland, and if whoever ran technical stuff at Leland came in and forced it upon me that we were going to do that, I might walk away over that. But I guess we'll see how tepid the job market looks before I make such bold claims.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, certainly how it's framed is not compelling. Right? You have this like, we're going to record everything and you're not going to be able to do anything without the overlords watching. I think if you were to say, all right, Jake, me and you are going to go build an AI version of us both, and we're going to go record that and learn, and it's going to lead you to becoming 20x more valuable. I think there's ways that we could get some team members on board. I don't know. We record all of our meetings, right? Isn't that step one in it?
Yeah. There's something about like keystrokes and like clicks and like heat mapping for attention has been pretty classically abused by management powers over the years. So yeah, I don't know, maybe this is another one of those like last week where, the gray in my beard is coming out and like the future is just every interaction is already monitored by everyone everywhere. So you might as well just lean into it and optimize yourself rather than not getting used to it.
Yeah, the takeaway is don't care about security breaches. Don't care about everyone watching you. Everything's changing anyways. Just suck.
All right, well, we got to have one more topic then for a takeaway, which is this was a very exciting afternoon for us yesterday. We were about to start our level 2 AI builders course, which is teaching a lot of people how to use Claude Code. And so part of that is that we had built the curriculum around people using Claude Code. And we had recommended that you get a $20 a month Claude Code Pro license. And about an hour before that class drops, we see online that Claude has updated their pricing page to now exclude Claude Code from the $20 max subscription, which caused a mild panic around here, Mike, would you say?
Yeah, full-scale panic.
I wanted to throw it out here because it is a fun thing, and I think it is a small win for the people on Fighting Back, John, but go through the rest of the story.
Well, I just wanted to say that it speaks to what Mike said earlier, which is this like subsidization of tokens and what happens when a company tries to say, okay, now it's not $20 a month. Now it's $200 a month. And you get a lot of people saying, well, great, I'll go to Codex. And Codex says, we're going to increase our limits. And OpenAI is doing all these things to try to drive adoption. And it's why competition is beautiful. And I think why the subsidization has to continue. We see companies that approach this very differently, where some of our AI Builder program customers say, we're going to measure token usage as a primary indicator of success of your builder program because we want to drive outcomes. And then others are like, we're really concerned about token usage, whatever. But I think what we've heard is that from several prominent people is that Anthropic is gross margin profitable. And if that's the case, then like, how much can they be subsidizing? Of course, like they do have a team of 2,000 people, but assuming these costs continue to go down, I think that right now what they're doing is not necessarily, I don't think it's like we got to figure out how to stop subsidizing these people. I think it's actually more of a, how do we navigate not having enough compute and driving like spend for people that are willing to spend the most and need it the most. And that's really like, it was a growth team experiment when they announced it. Turns out it's only for 2% of users and they rolled it out in the worst way possible. And I think they quickly rolled it back. But anyways.
Yeah, I think there's something true to that. But like at the universal immediate backlash of, we have some engineers here who I shared that to in Slack, and they immediately went and just canceled their Anthropic account, their personal one, not their work one. They're like, I maintain this for some stuff I do for fun and for learning, but like if I can't use Claude Code with it, it's useless to me. I'll just go immediately sign up with someone else. And it was like this big viral backlash moment, and they walked it back, and they tried to say it was a growth experiment. I don't know, John. I think this might be their future of what they're signaling. I'm a believer in the subsidization is real and super expensive at the amount of adoption. And I think even they said that, like, look, people use this a lot more than we anticipated. And so, I mean, pricing adjustments will have to happen. But I do think it was fun to see the people rally against it, and to get a slight win against the giant Anthropic, for even if it's for a week or two before they look at the prices.
Why don't you think they do just straight usage-based pricing, like pay for your tokens?
Well, like most pricing, I'm not a pricing theory guy, right? But in general, subscription stuff is both, more predictable, and you make it up for the long term, and lets you capture, surplus on your side because not people use it. It doesn't work if you go to an all-you-eat buffet and everyone are NFL linemen coming in all day, every day. Like, eventually you're going to run out of food, which is a phrase that came up earlier, oddly enough, in this podcast. So
their pricing is perfect right now. If you pay $20 a month, even if you use 0 tokens. So they're going to make money. And then the second you use up 100% of your usage, then you start having to pay for those tokens. And so for the power users, like the linebackers, as you were saying, Jake, who are coming in and doing a ton, they are actually paying more. I was talking to someone this morning who said, I'm paying at least $50 to $100 a month in additional tokens outside of my subscription because I just burn through usage so fast. But there's also a lot to be said about the psychological effects of I have a subscription, so this usage is like free to me, basically. So I'm going to use it more and incorporate it more in my life. Where if everything was token based, I would second guess like half of my workflows. Like that automation I have that reads Slack and tells me what I need to know when I start my day is like probably not worth the 50 cents of tokens it's burning. So I probably would have turned it off. But because it's like free, because I'm subscribed to it, then I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah, I think that's why some people fear for SaaS, right? Is you go from a seat-based license, which is essentially a subscription. If you try to do it on consumption, it just gives you the reverse incentives to not use the platform versus use it. But this is kind of a weird way to wrap it up, but we're at time. There's a ton more questions coming through on the chat that are like really good, like ROI on investment and other things. We're not gonna be able to get those all today. John, Mike, any final words?
No, it's exciting. I think it's fun to see how fast everything's changing. It's so quick. I think you're watching these companies experiment with their pricing in real time. They're shipping new features every day. They're in a brutal competition with each other. You have a behemoth in Google that prints cash, being able to fund their development. You have incredibly well-funded incumbents, or I guess startups or new players. It's crazy that Anthropic is like a newer company than, like, they started in like 2023 or something insane. OpenAI raised the largest round of capital ever in the last couple of weeks. So I think everything's changing. It's why we talk about this new stuff every week. It's fun for us to kind of connect with you guys and hear your thoughts. So appreciate you joining. And yeah, would love to hear your other questions in future sessions. We'll do this again every week. Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all.